Is it okay if I occasionally use your first name?
Of course.
Okay. The League thanks you for participating in the forum and being here to answer the questions of the voters. And as you agreed, you will stick to the issues and speak most about yourself. That is what voters want to hear. And you know you want them to hear all about you. So we drew for speaking order, and we're going to begin with an opening remark from Flo Koch.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Flo Kofer, and I am running for mayor of Sacramento. And I'd like to first start by thanking the Progressive Study Club and the Rainbow Club for hosting this along with the League of Women Voters. Many of you will remember that we were here with a little more crowded field of candidates in the primary, and so now we're down to the top two, and it is exciting to be able to have a more detailed conversation about our visions for Sacramento. I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I am the daughter of two public school teachers. My mom taught 8th grade English, and my dad taught 8th grade math. And growing up, I learned about how community cares for one another from these two public servants who never met a student who wasn't one of their own, even if they hadn't formally had them in their classroom. But unfortunately, when I was 11, my dad passed away from heart disease. He was born in 1947, and at the time he started smoking, there was no Surgeon General's warning, there were no smoke-free policies in place, and so he struggled with that addiction throughout his life. And ultimately, it cost him many years that my family and I wish we had had with him. And that's part of the reason that I decided to get into public health. And what brought me to Sacramento 20 years ago was a fellowship at the California Department of Public Health. And on my first day coming from the University of Michigan, where I had done graduate school, and seeing those palm fruit trees on Capitol Avenue made me say, I should find a reason to stay here because the weather is much better. And Sacramento is a truly wonderful place to live. It is a place where you can find food from every corner of the world, especially in our wonderful neighborhoods like Heritage Park and my own in Talek Village near Stockton and Fruit Ridge. And I have come to really appreciate just how you can always find something to do here, and the people here are incredibly warm and wonderful. In fact, I heard someone recently describe it as the most Midwest city on the West Coast. And so I think it's more than just the Sacramento Kings that make us Sacramento proud. We are truly a wonderful community. And two things can be true at the same time. We also have some major challenges. Right now, we are facing a housing and homelessness crisis that is unprecedented for us and also is leading the nation, and not in the way we like to, with good cutting-edge state policy. And so we want to find solutions. We have young people right here in our communities who are wondering if there's a future for them, even though they live near the people they love and would like to stay here. And so I am approaching this race thinking about the fact that we need new leadership that respects us, that listens to us, that partners with us, and that brings a new vision for Sacramento. And I have executive leadership experience, leading organizations, working on federal, state, and local policy to be able to make sure that our lives are improved by implementing public health policy. And our cities are responsible for the most important thing to us, the number of years in our life and the quality of life in our years. And that's why I would like to have the honor of being your next mayor. Thank you.
Kevin McCarty.
I think it's on the, this one. No, it didn't. When you flick it up, it didn't work. We can share. Yep.
Hi, good evening. It's great to be here once again at Heritage Park. First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for getting us together, talking about an important issue. We have an important election at the federal level, but all politics are local, so this is about our city. And thank you to Heritage Park for coming here tonight. I knew Heritage Park would come out, of course. As we know, I told you before, this is the #1 voting precinct in the entire city of Sacramento. So it's no wonder there are north of 100 of you here tonight. You know, I'm excited to have the opportunity to serve my hometown of Sacramento as your mayor. This is the city that raised me and gave me so much, and I have served in different capacities. I started out as a volunteer coach for youth, girls, and boys baseball, created a league in the south part of the city of Sacramento to give people an opportunity to play baseball. Didn't have a league. The neighborhood abandoned their league. I stepped up to create a league. You know, I've served as your council member. I've served as your assembly member. I've served as a city commissioner, but I know that I can do more. I know that I can do more to serve the city of Sacramento in a new capacity. And I think a lot about running for mayor, and I think about the wild ride, and here I am today. You know, I grew up in a little bit of a chaotic family, a single parent home, not too far from here. Started in North Highlands. We lived in 9 houses in our first 12 years. And then when I was in 12th grade, I flunked out of high school. And Ms. Calcano can tell you about it back here. I ended up at Winterstein Adult School, and I dusted myself off, and here I am today, having the opportunity to serve you as your mayor. You know, I think about running for mayor a lot, and why I decided to do this is I have 2 teenage girls in high school. And 2 years ago when I decided to run for mayor, they were walking home from school. They were 13, 14 years old in middle school. And they were walking home, and they had to dodge encampments walking home with dogs on leashes. And they were 13 and 14, and I wasn't pleased by what I saw in our neighborhoods, and I wasn't pleased about the urgency in the response. So that's when I decided I wanted to serve my hometown as your mayor. But I also think about them a lot, because now they're 16, and I hope they graduate from high school, perfectly like I did not do. I hope they go to college, and I hope that when they're 22-ish, they decide, you know what, I want to come back to Sacramento. I want them to be proud of our city of Sacramento. I want us to have housing at all income levels. I want us to have a vibrant economy. I want us to have safe neighborhoods, dealing with issues like homelessness and public safety. I want to make sure that we have a fun city with sports and arts and music. So I'm about solving problems. I'll talk about some of the solutions that I will bring to the issues of the day, and look forward to tonight's conversation, and more importantly, I respectfully ask for your vote in the coming weeks. Thank you.
All right. Flo, we begin the first question with you, and this is a question, these questions came directly from the community. We recognize that homelessness is a key issue for voters in Heritage Park and in our city. We will be addressing that separately in our questions, but outside of homelessness, what are the 3 major challenges facing our city, and what are your plans for addressing them? We have plenty of time, but of course, I'll say to both of you that looking over the questions, you'll have plenty of time to cover a lot of different issues. Thank you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Homelessness is the #1 issue, and we hear it everywhere, but I'm glad we have some time to talk about some of the other issues our city is facing. One of the first ones is that we need to be thinking about how we are investing in the city for the future. Because right now we are facing a budget deficit for the 2nd year in a row that really puts some constraints on what we're able to do. And a lot of the budget deficit were things that were preventable. I served as the chair of the Measure U Community Advisory Committee for 4 terms. And back when I started my tenure in 2019, we had a projected 5-year budget that showed the deficit we're currently in. And we tried to push the council to be able to implement some of the recommendations that they paid about $300,000 to a consultant to be able to get. And I served actually with Lisa Prey, who's one of the Heritage Park members here today, on that committee, trying to figure out how we could make sure that we could avoid this seemingly inevitable but definitely preventable cliff. So one of the things I want our city to do is thinking about where do we need to go in the future and how do we invest now? So we're making thoughtful investments that put us in a better position in the future and don't allow us to accumulate a lot of debt, don't allow us to accumulate unpaid obligations like what we have right now to the tune of $1 billion in deferred maintenance. We want to set the future up for us to be in a better position than we are right now. And so that involves having some really important conversations about what we need next in our city. The second thing I'd like to focus on is safety. We have had a lot of challenges in our community with actually investing in making sure that we prevent people from being harmed. And I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to be able to do that, to align our budgets to the outcomes we'd like to see, which are keeping our community safe and thinking about the best way to do that. And I'd also like for us to be thinking about economic development, because we have an opportunity right here in Sacramento to be able to grow our economy, to be able to support our small businesses and to be able to make sure that when people here want to start a new business or want to expand theirs, they have an opportunity to hire, because our small businesses are the cornerstone of our communities. Outside of government, they are some of the largest employers in our region, and we need to make sure that they have everything that they need to be able to not only survive and not shut down, but actually grow and be sustainable, because they infuse culture, they infuse dollars in our region, and they also help to take care of the workers right here in Sacramento.
Kevin?
Thank you. Of course, homelessness is the key issue. I know we'll get to that with the questions ahead. So the three issues that I think are also key are housing, public safety, and the budget as well. I'll start with housing. I'm deeply concerned about my generation, my kids, being able to afford a place to live in Sacramento. And it really is a key issue to make sure we keep the best coming back to Sacramento. And also the people who are here today, the talent here today, we need to keep them in Sacramento. So certainly housing has an impact on issues like homelessness, but also the talent in Sacramento. So we need to build way more housing at all income levels. So how I want to tackle those three things. One, I want to reduce red tape, make it easier to get a building permit. So my first day as mayor, I'm going to create a Blue Ribbon Commission to reform the building department to make it easier to build. Number two, I want to keep using underutilized state buildings. After that pandemic, when state workers left downtown, I wrote the law that says let's turn those state buildings into housing. And the first one is starting right now. EDB building on Capitol Mall is going to be 500 affordable housing units. Next, we're working on the county courthouse, which is moving to the new courthouse in a few months. So that's what we need to do, focus on building more housing in our core. Lastly, we lost redevelopment 14 years ago, and it has a correlation where we had a big jump in homelessness. I want to bring back a regional measure to help subsidize and build out more affordable housing. Public safety is a key issue. Let me just tell you just a few numbers. So when I was on the city council, we had 75,000 fewer people and 49 more police officers. So the whole notion as far as our police force, they're doing more with less. And so as we grow our economy, I want to make sure that we bring more public safety officers to our neighbors, and I'm sure there'll be a follow-up question. Lastly, the city budget is a huge issue. It's a big problem. What I want to get under is how we got in this mess in the first place. We're not going through a recession like we were 15 years ago, and we have, upwards of a $40 million deficit in this year's budget. So are we using our ongoing money, using one-time money for ongoing purposes? Are we focusing on issues outside of our city core? The city core in the general fund is public safety, police, fire, and parks. Those are 85% of the discretionary general fund budget. I want to make sure that we're spending our monies on the core issues for the residents of the city of Sacramento.
Okay. This question we've given you, Kevin, and it's homelessness. What do you think is working well currently, and what would you do differently? How would you go about measuring the success or failure of individual programs that are currently underway?
Okay, homeless, 3 questions. I'll give it a shot here.
There's something else.
Yeah, I got it. Well, on my first day as mayor, I'm going to create that Blue Ribbon Commission in the building department. The other thing I'm going to do my first day is I want to audit all of our existing homeless spending. Not that there's anything nefarious, but our problems are this high and our resources are this high. We need to make sure that we're getting our biggest bang for our buck. Some of the solutions are just way too costly. It would be great if we could have this permanent supportive housing for every homeless individual, an apartment for everybody, but that's $600,000 a unit. Based upon our current resources, we'd be able to build 35 a year. We need to focus on being more effective with our scarce dollars. I also want to make sure that we need to enforce the law as far as no camping. We can't have camping in our city parks, in front of businesses, in our neighborhoods. It's why I decided to run for mayor. I saw my kids having to dodge encampments coming home from school. It was too much. Conversely, we need to compassionately tell people where they can go. So that gets back to how we're using our money more effectively. I think we need to look at, the old city courtyards and county courtyards. We have 3 within the city of Sacramento. We have cow transplants. We have land behind Cal Expo that's been ID'd for temporary housing. We need to focus on low barrier solutions to to issue places where people can go. Lastly, we need to work on these issues together, because the city is part of the county solving these issues. Keep in mind, the county has 10 times more money than the city to address health and human services. I support having a joint powers authority where we work with the county, the city, and the neighboring jurisdictions to work on these issues together, so we can tackle issues like behavioral health, addiction, mental health, because those are so many of the triggers and the needed responses for people that are languishing on our streets. There's not one issue to solve this. It took a long time to get in this mess. It's going to take a lot of work and working together to tackle these issues moving forward. Thank you.
Flo?
Yes, would you mind repeating the question? I know it had 3 parts.
On homelessness, what do you think is working well currently, and what would you do differently? And how would you go about measuring the success or failure of individual programs that are now underway?
I think this is a critical question because we have to know what we are doing well. And what we are doing well is that there's a lot of energy and activity on this. You know, my campaign has knocked about 40,000 doors. We've heard from everyone that they care about this issue. We've been sitting down with everyone from developers to the folks who are working in the nonprofit sector to county and city workers who are working on homelessness and identifying what their pain points are and what's going well. And the need for coordination is at the top of the list. Right now, everyone is working really hard, but they're not working in a coordinated fashion, and so we're not getting to outcomes that we need, in part because we haven't set any goals. When I served on the Measure U committee, one of the first things I did was sit down with our assistant city manager, Lainey Milstein. And I said, what are the city's goals? So I could figure out how our committee on Measure U was gonna fit in. And she literally laughed in my face and said, the city doesn't have any goals. And then she turned to page 35 in the budget and showed me where the council had outlined a process to set goals and then had never used it. And so step 1 for me is to use things that people have implemented for us so we know where we're going. I have sometimes joked and offered that I give you the money in my wallet. It's only $1 right now. If anybody could tell me what the concrete goal for this year is for homelessness. Are we housing 3 people, 300, or 3,000? Nobody knows, because addressing homelessness is not a goal. And as an epidemiologist who focuses on benchmarks and data, I understand that. It is hard to figure out how you are going to move resources, how you're going to budget, and how everybody, including our rich community, can fill in to be able to help us out. So the first step is saying, what do we want to do over the next 2 years? And who do we need to work with to do that? And allowing our business improvement districts and our nonprofits and others to be a part of that. So we benchmark our success based on, did we reach that goal, yes or no? And everyone in our community knows how close we are, and also importantly, how they can help. Because this is a city where 30,000 people wake up early on Thanksgiving morning to do Run to Feed the Hungry. This is a place where people want to be a part of the solutions in their community and are naming the problems very clearly, but have not been given an opportunity to be able to help. And that is one of the resources, more than money and more than all the other conversations we've had, that we have not taken advantage of, is the fact that we have people in this community who care and who want to be a part of their solutions. And so we as a city are not gonna be able to fund this by ourselves. But this is a town where we give the most money we can to Big Day of Giving every year, even though we're not a particularly wealthy town. We can mobilize the energy of the people who live here to work well with those who have been tasked with certain parts of this project to actually be able to move things forward. And I'd like to see us do 3 things. House the 200 hardest to reach people who are in and out of our emergency departments. Work on making sure that by 2028, we have no children and families with children who are sleeping on our streets by working with our schools. And then lastly, making sure that we are setting up safe rest villages, like what's been done in Portland. So we actually have an opportunity for people to have a place to go, so we're not just cycling them through places over and over again.
Flo? What is your plan for addressing affordable housing within the city's areas of responsibility? As mayor, how would you ensure that each council district does its part in providing affordable and low-income housing, including for the senior community?
This is a great question, and I keep drawing on my experience as the Measure U chair because I learned a lot there. So one of the things you may remember when we passed Measure U was that we made a promise to voters that we were going to spend the second half cent, which was $50 to $70 million per year, on 3 things: on our creative economy and the arts, on inclusive economic development to help our small businesses and our struggling economic cores, and on our affordable housing fund. And unfortunately, voters were lied to, and we did not spend those dollars on any of those things. And so part of what we need to do is restore trust with voters by making good on promises we made. Integrity is important to me, and I do not take it lightly that people's hard-earned money is then not being spent where we told them it was going to be spent. So that's important for me because that allows us to have dollars. There's a lot of conversation right now between developers and between the city about how do we build more affordable housing and how do we also make sure we pay our workers a living wage, pay them prevailing wage. And when I sat down for 4 hours with a couple of developers in this town, you know what they said to me at the end? After they told me why it wouldn't pencil, and I said, well, what would make it work? And they said if the city and the county could kick in some money to help fill in this gap. That's what that fund was supposed to be, and so that's where we start with how do we get to a place where we fulfill that promise, because that's what's needed. The other thing is we need to have infill development. We have a lot of vacant buildings throughout the city of Sacramento that are sitting empty. And when we spend to actually be able to address those, we spend less on materials, which is better for the environment. It also means that we spend more on labor, which means we're spending money in a way where we have workers in Sacramento who are then taking that money and buying things in Sacramento, which benefits our economy. So the ways that I want to approach this are really thinking about how do we streamline our budget so that we're actually spending the money where we promised and making sure that we are using infill in places that already have a structure so that we can get these places up and running as quickly as possible.
Can you say the question?
Sure. What is your plan for addressing affordable housing within the city's areas of responsibility? And as mayor, how would you ensure that each council district does its part in providing affordable housing and low-income housing, including for the senior community?
Thank you. As I said in the intro, it's one of the issues that I'm most concerned about. As I look at young kids these days, and you probably have your own family members or grandkids, you're thinking about it. You know, if they get out of college and look paying their student debt, they get an entry-level job, you have to have 3 incomes to be able to afford to buy a house here in Sacramento. They don't want to rent a house in some of these really expensive new rentals. So we need to make sure we address this issue for the next generation to keep Sacramento strong. And I laid out some remedies. Let me walk through why I want to focus on the building department on my very first day. Cities don't control a lot of things. Cities don't control interest rates, right? We don't control labor costs. We don't control the cost of materials, steel, concrete, wood. But we do control time and certainty. So if we can reform our building department and help the customer get to success, not find a no, but how do we get to yes, we can get development projects that are currently thinking about going to Stockton, or West Sacramento, Colorado Hills, to come right here to Sacramento. That will grow our economy, get more tax dollars in our city, and also provide needed housing for the masses, students, seniors, and everybody in the middle. The focus on downtown, I want to tell you another number, 45%. 45% of all the land in the downtown core pays 0 property taxes. 0, because they're government buildings. And all those state workers are working remotely now. That's how it is going forward. So what do we do to turn that land into building more housing, build more housing, and get more money on the city books to pay for things like parks, fire, and police? Everything is connected. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, I support doing a ballot measure, hopefully with the city and county, maybe even the region like the Bay Area is doing, to provide a fund to build more housing, to build more rental housing, to pay for down payment assistance programs so people can buy their first home. There are ways the cities can step up and lead. There are self-help examples throughout the state of California, and I want to lead to bring about solutions to address this key issue of needed affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, sticking with the homelessness issue, Kevin. How much does the city spend on homelessness each year? And this voter says they're spending about $4 million picking up garbage from the homeless, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. So how can that money be redirected to better serving the homeless?
Well, I was on the city council, as I mentioned, and when I was on the city council, homelessness was not a big issue. Showed up at the town halls, nobody brought it up. The city budget didn't have 1 penny in the budget for homelessness. Now we have roughly 25, 30 million a year for our city's response, depending on what we get in the state budget every year. It's year to year. It's not nearly enough, which leads me to the point we need to be more effective. Let me give you the simple math real quick. If you have $25 million we get per year, and you divide by roughly $600,000 in this perfect homelessness housing, apartment for everybody, you'd be able to build between 30 and 40 units a year. We have 3,000 people in the city of Sacramento that are homeless, which is why we need to focus on low barrier answers. Tiny homes, places where people can legally camp on public land. It's not perfect, but too often we let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Places where there's water, and bathrooms, and trash, and you know what? Services will help sign up people for Medi-Cal so they can get their medication, address their behavioral health issues, maybe get a driver's license, and maybe focus on employment. We need to focus on those issues. Lastly, it's not always about money, I discovered. 2 years ago in the state budget, I was able to secure $25 million for the county of Sacramento to build more shelter to get people off of the parkway. You may have read in the news last week that they finally spent that money after 2 years and 2 months. It took 2 years and 2 months. And they're always focusing on the perfect solution. So what I want to do is have more of a sense of urgency and address this issue every week. I wouldn't agendize trivial issues like Middle East peace on the city council agenda. I'd agendize how we address homelessness at every single city council meeting to bring about needed solutions for our neighborhoods, our communities, and people that need a better option. Thank you.
Yes, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, the city is spending about $4 million picking up garbage from the homeless people. So how much is the city spending on the homeless each year, and can that money be redirected to better serving the homeless?
The answer to this is yes, we're spending somewhere around $30 million in direct services, but what that fails to include is calls for service. So what we've done an analysis on is looking at what are basically the 200 hardest to reach people that I talked about earlier, because these are the people who are in and out of our emergency departments regularly. These are people who are in and out of our county jails regularly. And these are people who are also frequent targets for calls for service to 911. So police and or fire are coming out to respond to them regularly. And when you add up the costs for them in these various sectors, the jail is the county, and of course healthcare for the emergency departments, we're spending somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million per person each year. So if for a fraction of that cost, we could house people, leveraging the resources from CalAIM to use the housing assistance and to actually get workers from SEIU 2015 who are home health care workers to be able to take care of them. And I want to make a special point to note that for those 200 people or so, I have a little cousin who has cerebral palsy, and my family has come up with a plan, he's 16 now, for what happens to him when his parents pass on and how we're going to care for him long term, because we understand that he is going to need long-term care. And many of the folks that we're talking about on the street are in the exact same position when they're the 200 hardest to reach folks. These are not the folks sleeping in their cars, who have a job, who lost their house because of rent going up. These are folks who have major mental health, substance use, and often developmental issues, chronic conditions that need long-term management. And so what we've done is ineffectively respond to their needs by pretending that these are one-time calls. Instead, what we need to do is employ our street medicine folks to be able to actually be there when people are being released from these points of service, to be able to actually help get them in, to stabilize them medically, and be able to make sure that they're in service. And we can do that. And our business improvement districts are also spending money on security that they now are ready to be able to invest in a collaborative effort across all of these different sectors to make sure that we're working together on a goal. The challenge has been everybody's there, and I'm going to keep saying this. Everybody in this community sees this as our top issue. The challenge has been we've not worked together using the standard practices of public health to actually be able to put a plan in place and work together to be able to solve the challenges and then roll those savings over into other areas that our city needs. Because we have needs beyond homelessness, and this is not an unsolvable problem. It feels that way because we're not working together, and we should be.
Okay, final questions on this topic. Flo. How do you feel about Camp Resolution recently being empty, given that it didn't cost the city anything? And what parks are suitable to have homeless camps?
This is a really great question. So, Camp Resolution was established in part because the city made a promise to the people who were in that region that they were going to pave the area and then create safe ground. And the city lied to them, and so they came back, and so a nonprofit partner stepped in the middle to say, we'll execute a lease to be able to make this work. There were some things about Camp Resolution that worked really well. The fact that people were able to be there and feel that they weren't going to be swept along and moved constantly so that you could have regular points of access for service. And the fact that there was a promise that they were going to be moved after being there into permanent supportive housing. The challenge was the city took a little bit too much of a hands-off approach and didn't provide electricity and water, didn't ensure that as part of that lease there was actually an ability to be able to support the self-governing aspect of the community and make sure that safety was assured and that there was a relationship with the neighbors around it. So there are some lessons that we learned from Camp Resolution. The challenge is by abruptly ending it and sweeping people away, we now have people sleeping on our streets again. We closed the safe ground option instead of improving it. And I was raised with the adage of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We already had 70 people there and a wait list of almost 1,000 people. To close that site just for it to sit empty is callous, it's harmful, and what we have learned from the Journal of the American Medical Association last year, they did an 11-year study of sweeps, and they found that they're costly, ineffective, and they actually result in deaths. So what we have done is done something that's not going to work, and outside of this community, because you may have gates, what the rest of us in Sacramento who are in ungated communities have experienced is more people waking up on our front porches or in our backyards because we've been sweeping them along recently. This doesn't work, and so there is a way for us to be able to make sure people have a safe place to go that's also humane. A place that has water and electricity and a place to charge your cell phones and a place to get a shower and to be able to meet your basic needs, and also to be enrolled in our homelessness management information system so we can actually find out, do you qualify for Social Security? Are you able to get in? Do you have a housing history that we can build on? What are your needs and what are the resources we can pair so we can get you into long-term housing? SHRA, I'm sure many of you read in the newspaper, had 300 units that were sitting vacant that could have had people in them. We could have worked together to be able to find, for the people who waited 18 months, someone to get into those sites so that they weren't just dispersed. And we also didn't set ourselves back because now we broke trust with all 70 of the people living there who felt very strongly that their next step was going to be into housing and that they were waiting and they were failed. And how likely is it, do you think, if we go to them today and say, hey, we have a good idea, that their first answer is going to be yes? Unlikely, because once again, we have a habit of breaking trust. And so I recognize as your next mayor that part of what I'm gonna have to do is go apologize for things I didn't agree with and wasn't responsible for in order to be able to build those relationships so we have a firm foundation to be able to do good work on. But that's my background in public health, is working with people, understanding how they work, and understanding what our basic needs are so we can actually get to outcomes. And that's what I'd like to have the opportunity to do if you vote for me.
One other question. What parks are suitable to have homeless camps in again?
Yes, so this is a really important question because what we're talking about are vacant parcels. So we have talked about underutilized parcels that we should be able to use. We are in an emergency. And so what that means is setting up these safe rest villages in underutilized parcels. We should be in a place where we are looking at vacant properties that we have and talking with community members nearby to say, where would you like this to go? What do you need for it to be safe and to have all of the amenities so that it's not blight on your community and so that it is an opportunity for people here to have their needs met? Because if they don't, we're again waking up with people sleeping in our backyards or on our front porches, and that's not safe, and that's not a long-term solution. So we should be using available parcels. But I will not, and this is my commitment to everyone, I will not be the one deciding that. A, I'm one of 9 votes, and B, I am a public health professional. And that means that nothing about us without us. I'm not going to, in a colonial fashion, impose on neighborhoods I don't live in. I am going to use time-tested methods to be able to sit down with community members and talk about what you need, what you want, what your fears are, and how you can be partners in making this successful. We've seen it happen in other places, and none of the spontaneous encampments around town are what anybody is proposing. This has to be something that we manage well, that is going to be safe and effective for our communities. But we are all both heartbroken and frustrated seeing people in our communities who are sleeping on the streets, and we need to have an answer other than, no, you can't sleep there, or the most expensive housing option, which is our county jail. I think Sacramentans want and can do better than that.
That was kind of a double header of two questions, so take all the time you want,
Yes.
but I'll repeat the question. How do you feel about camp resolution recently being emptied, given that it didn't cost the city anything? And what parks are suitable to have homeless camps in, if any?
You know, I support ideas like Camp Resolution, where it doesn't cost the city, where private entities, nonprofits can step up. That one was a tough site. It essentially was a toxics in the ground. Even the most pro advocate for homeless in the city council, Katie Valenzuela, called it a failed experiment. And the owner and the operator abandoned their lease. So that just site wasn't a good site. The state was saying it could only be utilized if people were in trailers or in tiny homes because of liability issues. So we have to find another site. We do have a site on Roseville Road where it offered places for people to go. Some of those individuals didn't want to go there for personal reasons and pets and property and there are others that they wanted to go along with them. But we need to make sure we tell people where they can go. I concur with that. We need to focus on where these are appropriate. So I'll tell you where they're not appropriate. They're not appropriate in our city parks. I don't know any neighbor that's going to volunteer to have a homeless take-ground site in our city parks. I think that would be a terrible idea. I do think there are places where we can go. The city just bought 102 acres in South Sacramento, and they want to build all kinds of regional sports complexes there. It's going to take a number of years for that to happen. So we could utilize that land for emergency housing today. We have 3 abandoned city courtyards. What's a courtyard? Where the utility workers park their trucks, where they have, maintenance for the city fleet. We have an abandoned city nursery where they used to grow our city trees behind the old executive airport. We have multiple sites where we could utilize today. I still support the idea of utilizing Cal Expo. Cal Expo had for many years the winter sanctuary for homeless, and now we have actually land that's been identified in legislation behind the horse track there along the river to have tiny homes and safe ground locations there. So I do support these notions of safe grounds. I like the idea of Camp Resolution. One of the reasons is the city can't afford to always pay for it ourselves. Let me give you an example. Over at Miller Park, where the city was operating a homeless camp, they were paying the operator there $200 a night per stall to just watch the locations, to just oversee them. You're saying, I want that contract. A third of them were vacant every night. You could have taken that $200 and put everybody up at the Hyatt House Hotel, the new one over here, or the Westin downtown Sacramento. We need to find more cost-effective things to do. So I like the notion of asking nonprofits, asking groups like the Safe Ground entity to find land, to lease land from willing individuals, to again go back to my issue of the day. Day one, as mayor of Sacramento, I want to audit what we spend on our homelessness, because I don't think there's anything nefarious. No one's stealing money, but we're not using our dollars effectively and efficiently to get a maximum return on our investment. So we need to bring about more common sense and strategy in how we allocate our resources. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, switching topics to public safety. It's a big issue in our community and the city. There's been a lot that has been shared about your differing viewpoints on how to support law enforcement and our city police department, while also addressing the social justice concerns raised by various community groups. Please share your thoughts and approach to this issue.
Thank you. It clearly is the issue that I go around and talk to people about. 2 issues: homelessness and public safety. Pretty much inwards, first of all, never where I go. Again, if you missed what I said earlier, let me tell you these two numbers again. 75 and 49. In the last 15 years, we've grown by 75,000 people, mainly out here in North Potomac, in the center part of the city of Sacramento. And we have 49 fewer police officers. And our police officers are doing more. Now they're, responding to homelessness calls. They're doing more protests at the Capitol. There's the arena and more entertainment downtown and festivals and concerts. They're spread thin. So we need more police, not less. So these ideas as far as cutting the police budget, I think would make our city less safe and less and have less of an opportunity to have businesses want to relocate to Sacramento and grow. So I do fully support expanding our police budget as revenues grow. I can't come here today and say, as mayor my first day, I'm going to hire 100 more police officers. We have a $40 million deficit. But as we grow our economy, I want to get back to the numbers we were at 15 years ago. I do think that we need to go about, bringing more accountability in our laws at the state level. And that's something I've worked on extensively this past year as your assembly member chairing the Public Safety Committee. My job as mayor, hopefully, is going to be much easier because of the work that we're doing. I believe, as you said, you can support redemption and needed reforms, but you need to have accountability on the front end. Too many repeat offenders are slipping through the cracks and causing challenges for our cities and our businesses. On needed police reforms, I have supported some of the toughest accountability measures, which, end of the day, got bipartisan support from Republicans and Democrats and support from the police officers unions. Because I do believe that you need to hold police officers accountable when they cross the line. You also need to hold individuals accountable when they cross the line and break the law. But back to overall police funding, I think two things can be true. You can support needed reforms and accountability for our police department and adequately fund our police force in the first place. Thank you.
I'm really glad this question has been asked because, as a woman, I experience safety differently. And part of what I know to be true for all of us is that none of us woke up this morning hoping to call 911. It means that we're either experiencing a medical emergency or a safety emergency, but something has gone wrong. And so given that we don't want to have to rely on 911, that's not what we would consider to be a good day, we need to be focusing on something that public health understands very well, which is prevention. Preventing what we can and then responding appropriately to what's left. And so I, as the daughter of 2 public school teachers, have a lot of empathy for our police officers because I think we do to police what we've done to teachers, which is ask them to take on roles that they're not trained for, that they're not adequately equipped to handle, and that someone else should be supporting them to do. And so when I look, in 2020, the New York Times put out a report. They looked at 3 different cities, including Sacramento. 35% of our officers' time is spent on non-criminal calls, the things they were never trained for and that we should not be relying on them to do. And so that's why last March, LAPD union, the largest union in the state, came out with a list of 28 calls and said, hey, these are calls that don't require a uniformed and an armed officer to respond to them. Please, can somebody else handle these calls so that we can do our jobs? So I want to make it clear, I want somebody to show up in the right way. But when I hear that, we're just going to keep adding officers, it doesn't solve the challenge of what are we asking them to do and have we overtasked them in the first place? And that's why former Chief Hahn, Daniel Hahn said, I set up the Department of Community Response so that somebody could take on those calls. But unfortunately, it hasn't been funded for 24-hour response so someone can help. And the consequence of that is, I'm sure many of you read about a month ago, where there was an attempted break-in Land Park. And the officers came out and they found the person hadn't gotten inside the house, and so they issued a trespassing ticket and said if the person comes back or if they get in the house, we'll be back to do something. That doesn't sound like a particularly reassuring thing to me as a woman living in my house, knowing that you won't be able to do something until this person comes back or gets inside. And so that's why we would have a Department of Community Response with 24 hours. So that call could be handed off to them to identify what does that person need and what can they do to lower the likelihood that that person is back at my house later. That's not law enforcement, that's prevention. That's the place that we want to invest. And we've done that as a city multiple times. When we went 2 years with no youth homicides because we invested in our violence intervention and prevention fund, we did that. And we need to also be thinking about public safety beyond just crime, because Sacramento has a high number of people who are killed and severely injured in traffic accidents. And yet last week, we just passed up on $10 million from Caltrans because the city didn't have enough foresight, like we talked about earlier with the budget, to put in the 10% match required for us to be able to improve the safety on these known corners. And that matters to me because I quite literally live at the intersection of where life and death came to bear. The corner where my house is right by West Campus High School. And there was a student who went there named Michelle who was advocating for a light at that corner because it was dangerous, and she died at the corner. And that her death was required for us to get that light. Young people should not have to give their lives to get basic traffic safety measures in place. We should have been at the table to get those dollars because we've had people killed and severely injured this year, and because we know with accurate precision that 17% of our roadways are responsible for 84% of those locations where people are killed or severely injured. That's part of public safety. So what frustrates me as a public health professional is when we say giving more money to police is public safety. That is part of public safety. That is not all of public safety. And our city's responsibility is for public safety, which goes so much further than police. And I'd like us to have the dollars available to do the things that will keep us safe. Furthermore, the police budget just 4 years ago was $156 million. It is now $250 million. And our own Chief Lester, has said we do not have people in the academy to fill vacancies. So we are not, anybody who tells you we're gonna hire new officers now or later is not accepting the reality that we don't have people in the academy, and right now we don't have the money either. So we have to start talking about who else we're going to equip to handle those 35% of calls that the police are not trained for, that are not criminal calls, and that they desperately are asking us for their help with. That is public safety, and we should be supporting our officers in the same ways that we support our teachers. That is our responsibility as a city. They are our employees.
Okay, Flo, changing the subject a little bit here. What actions will you take to ensure collaboration between county and city-funded programs and services? Especially those whose resources are in the county budget, but the greater need is in the city.
Absolutely. So as city residents, we are also members of the county, and I think sometimes that is often forgotten. So I want to make sure that we collaborate well, and thankfully, that's one of the things that I come to the table with a skill at, because I've been working in public health for the better part of 2 decades. And one of the things that I learned my first day in public health school, our professor said, you're responsible for the thing that matters most to human beings, the number of years in our life and the quality of life in our years. And by the way, you have limited authority and almost no money, good luck. And that was the moment where we all said, has my tuition check cleared? And if not, can I get a refund? And then he kind of laughed and said, so our job is to teach you how to collaborate, how to create a shared vision for things, and how to get things done. And so that's been my career, not being able to have executive, power over people to make them do things, but making the business case, making the public health case, making the common sense case to people that we should collaborate and work together because it works for you. And so that's a skill I come to the table with, and I'm experienced at. I've also worked with our county. I served on the Sheriff's Outreach Community Advisory Board, and until 2 weeks ago, I was the technical assistance provider for the accreditation for our public health department. During the pandemic, I helped set up some of our COVID test sites and places where people could also get vaccines, and I work with our public defender as well as our public health department to do that. So those relationships exist, and what we also understand is that some of what has unfortunately happened in the city of Sacramento has been ego. People fighting over the same jobs and not wanting to work together with one another. The human element, right, that we often don't talk about why things don't get done. And so we need to be in a place where we start coming to people and sitting down from the beginning and talking about how we're going to play well together in the sandbox. And it's not just the county. We need to do the exact same thing with the school board, because we have important partnerships there. And it was frustrating that when the city ended up in budget trouble this year, we went out and said, we're gonna cut the free RT program for kids K to 12 and saying that the school boards were gonna pick up the cost, and we didn't talk to them first. They found out in the news like everybody else. That is disrespectful, and it also means that we're not collaborating with one another. When Councilmember Talamantes just found out how that $25 million from the legislature was going to be spent, and she's on the 4x2, and she found out in the news when it was released, that's not partnership. So we're going to have real planning conversations about dollars that are coming into the region and what we can do about them and how we're going to work together. We're going to plan that out before the dollars are applied for and make sure that we have clear timelines when the dollars come in so that we're not waiting to see and hoping that somebody's going to tell us what's going on. We're actually going to be in the trenches together, and community members will also have the transparency of knowing, hey, we got these dollars, here's where they are and here's where they're going. Because there was $5 million that the city got after a parent was killed in front of Phoebe Hearst, and we haven't heard any updates about what's going on with those to be able to shore that up either. And I'm talking to school board members who are like, we're not in charge of the streets, but we're starting to talk about putting up our own things to be able to keep people safe. That's not functional, but there is a way to function. And when we think about the ways in which we're working around the state and other cities and counties are working together, we have models. And so I think what the people of Sacramento want are some adults in the room who are really going to sit down with one another, set egos and other things aside, and say, people deserve better. We are public servants, and we have to work together and actually make that happen. And that is my commitment to you as the city of Sacramento, is to not point fingers, but to get it done and to get outcomes.
Kevin?
Yes,
The question was, what actions will you take to ensure collaboration between county and city-funded programs and services, especially those whose resources are in the county budget, but the greater need is in the city?
That is a key issue on a lot of issues, but again, on issues related to homelessness. The county for decades has been the responding entity for homelessness. It wasn't until the last 10 years that we even got engaged in this issue. So the county budget is 10 times more than the city for working on these issues. So we need to work on these issues together. We need to work on these issues with our city and county partners. And I think I'm ready to do that because the majority of the Board of Supervisors have endorsed our candidacy. I've worked with them as an assembly member delivering for our area. Years ago, we wanted to create a Sacramento conservancy to get money for the Riverwood Parkway. I teamed up with Supervisor Phil Cerna and our county supervisor, Rich Desmond, and then Don Natoli to create this law, and we brought $48 million to enhance our river parkway through partnerships, through collaborations with the city and county working together. On the issue of homelessness, one thing that is clear to me is, again, we need to be working on these things in tandem. Do you know that there are joint powers authorities that the city council members and supervisors serve on related to cable television, to air quality, to regional transportation, to issues related to our stormwater, our sewage system, but not homelessness, the one issue that everybody's asking us to tackle? What I'm going to do as mayor is bring our board of supervisors, the city of Sacramento, and the adjacent cities together to work on these things in tandem. Because we have these things called quarters, but problems don't see that. Homelessness is an issue across the Tower Bridge, right over here in the county to Rio Linda, over to other jurisdictions as well. So we need to make sure that we're working on these things together in tandem. And I'm a big believer in that old adage, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with others. And all of my experience shows me and tells me that if you want to work and tackle these issues in tandem, you need to work side by side. So those are skills that I've learned through my experience as a city commissioner, tackling slumlords, working with the city council and my then housing commission to write laws to go after slumlords that were neglecting neighborhoods and clean up those areas. I'm working as your council member for the city of Sacramento, working in the legislature. Because again, working with the city and county is the only way that we can tackle these issues with clarity. Thank you.
Kevin, this is a long question. Well, it's a long background. And because I don't live in this area, I'm going to read it carefully till I get it right. Recent road work to widen Elkhorn Boulevard in front of Heritage Park will directly link I-80 to the airport and expand county city traffic to I-5, avoiding downtown. This very small project has given us even greater insight into the impact of proposals to make changes to the current land use master plan for Sacramento County. These are plans to develop Grand Park, that's 23,000 homes, the Upper West Side, 9,000 homes, and the South Airport Industrial Project, which is 6 million square feet of warehouses. We are concerned about their impact on river, farmland, and habitat north of Natomas, especially related to flood protection, farmland preservation, and protection of local endangered species and the Pacific Flyway. The question, in your responses, please, that's the background. In your responses, please focus on the South Airport project. It's located next to Westlake. Briefly, yes or no, do you support it? I think it's a conversation here. What is your assessment of its impact on Natomas? If the project is approved as mayor, would you support its annexation into Natomas and the city?
That's a long question. I think I know who wrote that question. I'm looking at them right here in the front row.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I guess our first forum we had in January, I believe that you were a few seconds late because of this traffic, and I was too.
Yes.
And so I've come out to Natomas a lot, and I'm always stuck in this traffic. And people ask me, what are you going to do about homelessness and public safety and that traffic on the I-5 and getting through? So yes, we have grown tremendously out here in Natomas, but we haven't always kept up with the infrastructure. So that means that developments need to pay their fair share. We need to work with our congressional partners to make sure we get federal money to focus on as well. Like how about one day, light rail over the river to Natomas and to the airport, which I'm a big supporter of. But on these individual projects, it goes back to those issues we focused on earlier. We need to address homelessness. We need to build out more housing in Sacramento. So we need to build way more houses. We need to balance where there's land in the core of the city of Sacramento County and not going out to the sticks, to El Dorado Hills and Folsom, other areas where they're further away. Because they're building more housing in Yuba City and Plumas, just up the way, up 99 and 5. But what are we doing to make sure that we are addressing those issues? Because that traffic is coming right by us and to downtown Sacramento. So I do support looking at some of these infill projects. We're going to make sure that we focus on our sensitive habitat here. It's an amazing area we have here, so close to the Sacramento River and the buffer. We can just go, a mile or so away and see Mother Nature right here. So we need to respect that. But also, I think we need to focus on how we can grow our economy, looking at the opportunities near the airport to grow more industrial jobs here, to grow our economic base, to hire more parks and police and firefighters for our city, but also need the opportunity to build more housing at all income levels. So on this project, I'm not voting on it right now, but as your mayor, I will always listen to your opinion, like I did as a council member, and make sure we evaluate both sides of the equation. Thank you.
One of my core personal values is congruency, being able to have alignment between the things that I advocate for. And so my simple answer to this is no, I'm not supportive of the South Airport Industrial Project. And I'm not supportive of it because I think it's bad for public health. I think it goes against the important role we have to make sure that we're protecting our environment, including our birds, and because it also doesn't make financial sense. When I look at the economic reports for the city of Sacramento, we have a ton of empty warehouses. So the last thing that we need, even if we were temporarily to set those other things aside, we don't need any more empty warehouses. We have plenty. So I definitely want those jobs to come to Sacramento. I can certainly agree on that. But we already have infrastructure in place to be able to use warehouses. So we don't need to go into the Natomas Basin and destroy our habitat to be able to do that. It's very similar to the reason why I was unsupportive of requiring the state workers to come back downtown. How do we have, to return to office, how do we have a climate goal that says we need to reduce car trips? No, we don't have the regional transit to be able to support those workers, and then say, oh, set that aside for a moment. I know that air quality by the American Lung Association is F-rating, but please come back downtown and try to solve a problem that's existed for 40 years, which is that downtown goes to sleep at 3 o'clock because that's when the state workers leave, right? So that's not thinking innovatively and towards the future. What is thinking about how can we protect our environment while also building our economy. It's both and that's why I'm excited to have worked with, for example, Dr. Wood, to be able to say, can we bring a residential campus for Sac State downtown to fill up some of those spaces? So we have young people who, by the way, don't wake up until 2, so there's your problem of who's gonna buy things after 3 o'clock, living downtown and infusing some energy into the area. That's the way that we move things forward. So no, I'm not supportive of this project because it goes against everything that we're saying here as a region, that we care about the climate, that we want to protect it, and that we want to protect our natural resources. We can't do that and then also say, oh, but warehouses supersede that need. It doesn't make sense. It's bad for public health. It's near schools, and there's an entire community of people here for whom it would change their air quality and their access to resources. The answer has to be no, and we can't equivocate on that.
What is your understanding of your role as mayor versus the role of the city manager? And will you seek to be a strong mayor and change our city form of government?
I will not seek to change our form of government, and I think the mayor's role can be plenty strong as is. And I say that because I have always hated the framing of strong mayor versus weak mayor. Because have any of you ever woken up in the morning saying, I hope to be weak? No. So basically it's bad mayor versus good mayor, which is why we keep asking the question over and over again, because nobody wants to be bad mayor. I mentioned to you before, I'm a public health professional. So this is about collaborative mayor versus executive mayor. It's about whether we want to go fast and alone or far and together. And I think we want to go far and together. So I think that we need a collaborative mayor, because when we can get not just 5 votes, but 9 votes on certain things. We always talk about, can we count to 5? And I'm saying, let's start with the things that we're in universal agreement on, that we can work together, and let's backtrack to 8 and 7 and 6 and 5. We don't have to start with the hardest thing that we don't agree on first. Let's start when we have alignment and actually pull people together. And I see the strengths of every single council member. The council member representing District 1 has a strong background in governance and can help us really think through how are we making decisions as a city, and is it collaborative? I'm thinking about, all of the council members and the way that they're able to pull people together and that we can work as a team. And that's something that I have executive leadership experience to do. I've been in the C-suite of an organization that had to set goals for the organization and performance goals for the staff. And that's what's been missing in the city of Sacramento. We have not had goals. And our staff, our city attorney, our city clerk, our city treasurer, and our city manager have not had goals that we can hold them accountable to as well. So before we start talking about making changes to structure, we need to start talking about, have we used the structure well? And the answer to that is no. We have not used the power. The city manager reports to the mayor and council. If the mayor and the council set priorities and goals, it then becomes their responsibility to implement those. And we've seen when that happens, that job happens. And when it doesn't, then the city manager has more authority than the voters wanted that person to have. So the goal is for us to do our jobs. And I know, having served in executive leadership, that anytime I have performance of a staff member that I'm concerned about, the first question I ask myself or that person's supervisor is this a management issue? And I think in the city of Sacramento, this is a management issue that the city council and mayor have not taken seriously, have not agendized what are we doing and what are we requiring our staff to do to collaborate with that. And that's the thing that's most needed. And that's what I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues to be able to address. The mayor role is plenty strong, and we can get a lot done with our current structure.
Strong mayor.
Yes, no. About your understanding of your role as mayor versus the role of the city.
Yes. Let me answer the first question first, is before the city manager, the strong mayor approach. I don't support that. That's where I met you, the League of Women Voters, 15 years ago, when I opposed this measure multiple times. Most importantly, the voters of Sacramento have said no at least 4 times in the last 40 years. Why? Because we want our council members to be able to be a voice. We don't want to put our thumb on the scale and have one person making all the decisions on behalf of the powerful interests downtown. And if you look about it across the state of California, let me tell you some cities that have strong mayors. The city of Oakland, they have a challenge with public safety issues, police issues. The city of San Francisco, they have a problem with homelessness. Yes, not a panacea. The city of San Jose, that doesn't have a strong mayor, is doing an amazing job building more tiny homes and tackling homelessness. So it's not always about the strong mayor, it's about working as a team and working in partnership. So I do support the current structure, which has the city council hires a city manager. It's like we're the board of directors, we hire the CEO of the organization. He or she implements the goals and the issues that the city wants to address. Hiring more workers to work in our city parks, modernizing our building department to speed up development of even affordable housing, focusing on community partner opportunities to bring down state-owned homes for sites that can be managed. So that's what that's all about, is working and setting priorities with our city manager. I've worked at city council before. I was a 10-year city council member. I'm not going to show up on the first day not knowing how it works. You have to be able to work with others, work with your colleagues, even people that you don't always agree with. When I was a city council member, we had a guy next to me who was a former sheriff, the last Republican that served on the Sacramento City Council, named Robbie Roberts. And I wanted to introduce a bill to go after illegal gun sales in Sacramento, going after gun dealers. It was very controversial, very controversial. And I know we had a lot of opposition from these groups. And I said, Robbie Waters, my seatmate, will you join with me and introduce this law with me? He said, yeah, Ernie, we'll do it together. It's a smart law enforcement idea. We'll work on those issues together. So on a lot of these things, you need to work with people that aren't always on your same side on these issues. And that's what I've always done as a leader for the city of Sacramento, working with our council to set priorities and focusing on teaming up with our city manager to implement our vision. Thank you.
Kevin, there's been discussions about a new bridge across the river into Natomas. Recent road work on 99 and 95 have demonstrated the inadequacy of the connection between Natomas and the downtown area, as well as highlighting the need for safe evacuation routes for North and South Natomas in the event of a natural disaster.
Thank you.
Is there only increase with the plan?
Yes.
Population of Filipinos?
Yes, absolutely.
The overall concept of a new bridge.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I do.
Yes, yeah, they'll
100%.
probably
And
also
I want
pull
to
pieces
have
out for
public
various
transportation
things that we're doing else, but we'll
Let me
post
tell you
the
what
whole
I
thing
feel
as
bad
well.
for Natomas kids that
Yeah.
are missing. Is being able to take light rail for free to school.
No, well,
community
I mean,
functions.
probably
My
for our
kids-
social media
My
at
kids
least.
go to McClatchy High School. They take light
Okay.
rail home.
But we'll post the
after
whole thing.
school for free.
Good job.
It gives them independence.
Thank
It also
you.
gives
Thank you so much, Mom.
activities. They can go from our house to downtown to go to concerts, art, exhibits.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's why I think these are so important for us to have. And I didn't get to mention that I'm endorsed by all of the women's group, all the women. In fact, I'm endorsed by 5 Democratic clubs, and so I'll hop down. Yeah.
Careful there.
I know.
At least your heels are.
Yes, they gave me a little boost, right? If they're willing, I'm willing.
The second most dangerous city in
Jump
America
in.
for funding besides
Thank
the
you.
borders. We saw this, every decade or so.
Hey, gorgeous.
We go to race with people who come to the city of Sacramento. You see right now during rush hour.
Thanks, Aria.
we have traffic.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate
You
it.
made a comment that made me laugh. I can take and I park. I go to about 17 King Street. A friend comes over and picks me up way down at the mall. Now I can take the bus
nearly half of the
to
cities
the
in
game.
Sacramento, and just
The
as
bus
much
doesn't come
Back.
back.
Yep.
And the one time I took a drive, and I hate
Yeah.
that, he wasn't going to take me to my car. He was going to take me to this other mall that I told him, my car's not parked there.
Right.
And he was foreign, he had an accent, which is fine. And he wouldn't go back. And then he was going to drop me off in the middle of a field. And I said,
every few
you
years,
can't
the
drop
city
me
of
off in the
Sacramento
middle of
goes
a
out.
field.
Right.
My cars have to be out of the mall.
It's so wild because I've been stranded at Golden One. I went to go see Lizzo last year, and so I took light rail to go, and then when it was over, the light rail stopped running before the concert was even over, and I was like,
Take a taxi or something.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But that was it. It doesn't come
yep,
back.
yeah, it's a problem.
Thank you very much.
Hi, how are you?
Question.
Sure.
Who do you support for the presidential election?
I'm supporting Harris Walton.
Oh, really? That's such a big
Yes, it is. It really is.
I
Yes.
had
Yes.
the same thing.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
don't care what you do as the mayor. I mean, never mind.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not gonna vote
if we don't have a good president, we're gonna have a lot bigger problems here. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Lastly,
Thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate it. It's so good to see you again.
It is. You were impressed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Life.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was like, really try to speak from the heart about why I'm doing this and what I hope for our community and hope it shows through to people. So, how are you?
I met you at the restaurant.
Yes.
You weren't feeling well. I'm
Yes,
glad you're feeling better.
I'm feeling so much better. Oh my goodness. That day, what ended up happening was I called the county and I reported the food because I had eaten at another restaurant, which shall remain named public. They called me back 4 days later and they were like,
Okay.
So
We
yes,
found
I am
conditions
supportive of
consistent
making
with
sure
food
that we have a
poisoning there.
bridge. And then the other person I ate breakfast with that morning got sick also.
on emergency response.
Yeah.
So I
So
do think it's important that we have
I
multiple
appreciate
access
it.
points
Yes,
to be able
that was
to
a rough
help
day.
that,
Woo.
especially
I was at Bella
as
Brew and I was
the
like,
party has already
oh, it
mentioned,
feels so great.
there is such a high risk of flood. So I
Well,
do
it
want
wasn't
us
at
to
Bella
know
Brew, but
already
I got
in
sick
place
at
on
Bella
the
Brew
point
from
of
my
no
breakfast.
return
Yes. No. I got sick somewhere else. I
I
ate the food somewhere else and then but the people at Bella Brew were amazing. They took such good care
in the process right now.
because I was going down. I was like,
Councilmember
Yeah.
Kaplan, who
Hi,
represents
Jackie.
District
How are
1.
you?
It's called City Limits.
It's
If
wonderful
anybody
to
of
meet
you
you.
would like to join our informal book club. And it's about transportation in the U.S. and some of the challenges for how that has been developed. And one of the real challenges is that sometimes, like we're doing right now with expanding the freeway, we do that in a very car-centric way. But we don't think about public transit when we do it. So one of the things when I talked to Henry Lee, who's the head of regional transit, and we talked about is protected bus lanes. Because there's nothing more frustrating than being in a bus, sitting in the same traffic as the cars, wondering, was this a better choice, right? Because of all the things you have to do. So public transit should be set up with the infrastructure to be able to move quickly, to be a better
he
choice.
worked at the California
so that
Department of
more
Public
people
Health?
can not only opt in, but that can actually get around in a more convenient way.
Okay.
And so that's
I
part
was
of
like,
what
if
I'd
it
like
was
to
the
see
county,
if we're
I might
gonna
not have
build
known it because I did more
infrastructure
statewide
projects, is to
work
make
at
sure that we
first.
also have protected
Yeah.
bus lanes. Because it is
Yeah,
true.
but no,
It would be
I didn't know
great
that.
to have light rail coming into
Oh,
our
wow.
airport.
Okay.
And in fact, as someone who moved here 20 years ago, I've been very confused about how the light rail was set up.
All right.
Because
Is
when
he
I first
still
got here, I
around?
was like, so it doesn't go to the airport. It didn't go to Arco Arena. It
well, I'll have
drove
to keep
by
that
the
name in
Safeway
mind, John
downtown, but
Jasper.
doesn't stop. It doesn't go to the convention center. It doesn't go to Cal Expo. Like, explain to me, if I've been to any other city, where this light rail is going and why. So I would not have set it up this way. And so it does not make sense that it doesn't go any of the other places that literally any other light rail would. But for now, we don't have, we have to think about how we're going to get the funding to be able to support that project. And in the interim, protected bus lanes are a great way.
I'm so glad you
We also
came.
know
Thank
that
you.
this
Thank you
region
for
of the
joining us.
city
It really
is
means
ultimately
a lot.
a public
And
transit
I hope you
desert.
liked what you
And I
heard.
want to be able to
And I hope
change
I
that.
got
I
on
want
your
us to think
road.
about Smart Ride and some of the other ways that we can make it convenient and accessible for people to be able to use transit so that there's a high level of connectivity. And I think that has to be a priority if we're also going to achieve our climate goals.
I won't say what I thought either way, just because I don't think it's the right time. She said,
Sure.
but, you know, it's just,
Persist for some
you know,
years.
it's really interesting. So
How can you work
from that
with your fellow
standpoint,
city
I
council
can't
members and
pick one
senior
based
staff,
on your
city staff,
what you want
to address this?
Okay.
And if you
basically
could
it's the
include in your
same.
answer,
I'm sure there's some differences.
Yeah.
how you plan to
That would be
support
a
small
true
business.
That's true.
You know, it's not.
That's true. That's true. Yes.
Yes, so
that's
I
true. That's
mentioned
absolutely
earlier
true.
that this is a really frustrating place to be because 5 years ago, many of us
Yeah,
who
I
on the
do too.
measurement
I'm glad you
committee
came.
said we should do something
Oh,
about
how
this
long
to
have you been
prevent
here?
it. And so part of what we have to do now is
Well,
find
welcome.
ways to be able to save money,
Whenever it was March.
preferably the ones that don't require us to
Yeah.
cut city streets.
Well,
And so what that
I'm glad
looks like
you came
is
out
we
to
have a
learn more.
$1.7 billion budget, and about
Yes, you
7
do.
million of it
You
is
at, you at
general.
least
And so that's
have
not a
9
lot,
months.
especially when you consider that we have 540,000 people
Yes.
living in the
You
city of
you've
Sacramento.
had 9 more
But
9
there are
months
some
to be here, so
recommendations
you
that
have
I
a,
mentioned
I mean, you
that
have a
are coming
perspective,
about
right?
how
Your
we can
perspective is as a
streamline
new
our
person.
spending.
What
So
is
we
your
don't have to
vision?
cut
You don't
staff,
maybe have all
but
the
we can
history
actually
of
spend our
Sacramento, but you
dollars
have the
in a
perspective
smarter
of what is your
way
vision.
that will
So,
help us save
yeah,
save
so
money. And so that's
50
part of what we
days.
need to
I
do.
hope I get
And
a
I also
chance to
want to
earn
be
your
doing
vote
a
in those next 50
long-term,
days.
2-year, 5-year, 10-year forecast of if we
I'm
spend
gonna
money
try,
now,
Lisa.
how
I'm
can
gonna
we
try.
save money in the future? And that's why I'm frustrated about that
I'm sorry,
$1
where'd you
million
come from?
match that we should have put in for the
Oh,
college.
okay. I was like, I'm from Pittsburgh,
Because it
Pennsylvania.
would
I was like,
actually
wait a
help us save
minute.
dollars. By shoring up those areas, you would have reduced the amount of 911 calls we had to field for people
I know
being
where it
injured
is.
or
I know
harmed.
where it is.
But also, it would have allowed us to install these brand new traffic circles,
Yep.
the likes
Yep.
of which we don't have anywhere in the city of Sacramento, that have now been tested and are looking at 0
Thank you for
fatalities
coming. I
in the
really
walkways of
appreciate
people
it.
moving through them. And so that meant that we wouldn't
it
have
was
to pay
really nice
utilities,
meeting you.
ongoing utilities for the traffic lights at some of these corners. So it would have been a great savings for us in the future. And that's what I'm going to be looking at. How can we save money in the future?
Yeah.
And also, how can we bolster our revenue? Because I will tell you, nothing frustrates me more than being at Golden One Arena, Go Kings, and seeing somebody sitting next to me. I've been a 12-year season ticket holder, but seeing somebody sitting next to me buying a $17 Heineken or a $17, Budweiser, and not a $17 Oak Park Brew or Track 7 Brew, which are local breweries in Sacramento. Because if we were buying local, that would be supporting local jobs, expanding local small businesses. And so every time we spend city dollars, I want to see how is that dollar going to be returned to us, and how many times can it turn over in various communities before it leaves.
Which is one
And
person
we
because
have
you're
to
doing
really
5
think
people's
about that
jobs.
because we allowed $1 billion in deferred maintenance to build up in the city of Sacramento, and it ultimately resulted in the closing of Rio City Cafe. We've been talking about wanting to improve our waterfront and needing more money.
and you learned it
And what do
over
we
time,
do?
yeah.
The city becomes a slumlord, essentially, by not improving the patio there, and ultimately have to close down, which costs us tax revenue. That was a failure on our part, and it's something that I do not want to see happen under our watch. So I want us to
No,
be
you could
thinking
have
about
slapped me
what
for
are
the
the types
mosquito.
of
That
investments
probably
we can
would have
make
been
that will make
better
sure we
than
can at least
a
maintain
bite.
the funds we have, but ultimately try to grow them. And there are smart ways to do that, and ways that we already have recommendations for, and my commitment to you is to listen to the good advice and put them in practice and encourage my colleagues to do the same.
Hi.
Is-
I
is
grew up
the
in the Hill
government
District.
Moving
Yep.
forward is going to be a shortfall that will
Oh,
persist
nice.
for
Okay.
some
What high
years.
school did you go
What are we
to?
going to do about it? How will we work with the city
Thank you.
council?
It's good to see you too.
How will
Are
the
you all having a
city
drink
council
outside?
staff to address it? And
Okay.
include
All right.
any ideas
Yeah, I was
you
like, I
have
might stick around.
for small business development.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, first of all, I'm very
You're
concerned.
from Shady
we
Side.
have
Yeah,
a
I've
city
been here for a long time.
Okay. Did you go to high school there? Okay.
I went to school in
Just think
Union.
about it.
Oh, yes. My dad's from
9,
Connellsville.
11,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Pre-recession.
I know Connellsville very well.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. So you grew up in Uniontown. So you went to Uniontown High? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
And my
yeah.
daughter was born in Connellsville.
We need to make
Oh, okay. Yep. Yep.
See?
eliminating
No, well, yeah,
remember
my
Hill
shuttering
District.
yeah, my family spends a lot of time at the American Legion, which is around the corner from our house on Patton Street. So my great grandparents bought that house, and we still have it in the family.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Bring back
Yep.
these
Yeah.
Was your mom still?
My mom is actually in New Jersey now. So because my dad passed away When I graduated from high school, my mom moved to New Jersey. I think she wanted a fresh start. She didn't want to be in the house by herself at that point. So she moved to New Jersey, and she's really made a great community there. And she's closer to my aunt because my mom grew up in Philadelphia, so she's right there. And so so she's enjoying it. But I'm actually trying to convince her to move to Heritage Park. So she and my aunt. I want to convince. So, but the last time they were here, we didn't make it up here because they were here for the election and all that stuff. So, oh yes, absolutely.
Roughly 85% of the discretionary general fund goes to three issues: police, fire, and our parks. Sure, we have water and trash, but that comes through the bills that you pay. The general fund is focused on the budget deficit issues. We need to focus on the core issues. So I'm going to work on our city budget to make sure we look at areas that may look good and sound nice, but aren't focused on the core needs for city residents. The core issues: keep our neighborhoods safe, keep our parks clean, making sure that fire and public safety police respond if you God forbid, have to call 911. As far as how we're going to do this, look, the voters they don't want to pass any more taxes. I get that. How do we do this? We make smart decisions on our budget, and we grow our economy. Back to what I said earlier. Remember that 45% number of downtown buildings pay zero property taxes? I want to turn those over to private development to build more needed housing and get on the property tax rules to get more money in the city of Sacramento. Yeah, Dr. Flo and I both agree on bringing universities downtown, both Sac State and University of California in our core, which would bring more life to our downtown. I went to, again, streamline the building department process to have more developments here, whether they're restaurants or needed senior housing or student housing, to bring more revenues in the city of Sacramento. That's how you address the budget deficit, is growing our economy in addition to making tough choices leading the city budget process. Thank you.
Okay, it's time for closing remarks, and we'll begin closing remarks with Flo.
I went first. Do we want to go to him first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you first.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm running for mayor because I live in this community, and I, like many of you, enjoy Sacramento in so many tremendous ways, but have been frustrated by the things that have not happened that I know can happen. And that's how my campaign slogan was actually developed, was truly from a belief that more is possible for our community. My former Mayor Tom Murphy of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, came to visit Sacramento fairly recently, and he met with the Downtown Partnership and several others throughout the community. And when we sat down to have his final assessment, he said, Sacramento ultimately has two options. It can either build towards a vision for the future, or it can manage its own decline. And I do not see that second option as a good one. And I don't want that to be the future for Sacramento. So I want us to be bringing new ideas. I want us to be approaching things in a way that works. I want us to be dusting off all of these plans that we developed but haven't put in place that could help us to be in a future position. Because there are so many people in this region who are ready to work with us and dedicated to roll up their sleeves and get things done. And that's been my career, is getting things done. From federal policy, when I first started working at the Department of Public Health and the Affordable Care Act was passed, and we helped make sure that the women's preventive services included no copay. That was one of my first roles and responsibilities after my fellowship. From state policy, where we were able to work with coalitions in both conservative and more progressive areas across the state to lower our infant mortality rate by 14%, so that women and their babies were living longer and healthier, and we're not experiencing the devastation of not seeing your baby turn 1. And at the local level, helping to set up the COVID sites and make sure that we were testing and providing vaccines and responding to the crisis of our era, and also planning for the future, knowing that across the state, many places have not updated their emergency response plans since before the iPhone was created. Those are the types of things that we're working on to get actual results at the local, state, and federal level. And that's the kind of result getting that I want to bring to the city of Sacramento. New leadership, new ideas about how we can collaborate, how your voices can be better heard at City Hall. So you're not finding out about things because they were put on an agenda on Thursday and you're given 2 minutes to comment on them on Tuesday.
I want our community members to be key thought partners in what we do, and that's why I'm running a people-powered campaign. A campaign that's not taking corporate money, but is involving our community members, is knocking on doors and having conversations and having now 85 house parties to be able to talk about what we want to see in our community and continue this work after the election. Because what we're doing is building a movement for how Sacramento can truly experience the benefits of being a community. And I think all of us want that. We want to be better connected, we want to be better involved, and we want Sacramento to be a city that works. And that is my commitment to you, is to lead with the ultimate goal that our processes will work well, that our staff will be well cared for, and that our communities will be respected, partnered with, and listened to. And that's why I would love to earn your vote in the next 50 days. Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for being here today. Democracy at its finest. I think this is our 4th or 5th forum. We're doing about a dozen of them. So I know we're all glued to the presidential race. But again, all politics are local.
That's right.
These decisions really matter, the future of our city. You know, we need a new direction in our city. We have a lot of challenges. Look, I know Dr. Flo loves Sacramento, so do I. This is my hometown city. This is where we're raising our teenage daughters. I care so much about the future of our city, and I know that I can do more to help tackle our largest challenges. You know, I'm going to dig in and use my experience, my ability to work with others, because that's how we're going to solve these issues, with others. You know, this isn't one person who can solve these issues together on our own. We need to be able to partner. And I'm super excited that the majority of elected officials, from the Board of Supervisors to our city council members, to our congressional representative up here, to our assembly members, to leaders who have seen my work have endorsed our candidacy, as have our firefighters, our police officers, because they know that I can make tough decisions, and more importantly, bring common sense, practical solutions to the issues. Like, how do we tackle homelessness? How do you enforce no camping in city parks, in our neighborhoods, in front of businesses, but also bring about practical places where people can go, lower barriers, focus on the tax dollars to bring about needed smart reforms, bring about common sense solutions to policing. You know, I want to fully save our police department. I don't support cuts to our police department. I want to grow our city budget and hire more, like we had those 49 officers 15 years ago. So I'm excited to continue talking to all of you in the next 50 days. I would ask that you go and read my website, read my positions. If you have any follow-up questions that weren't answered here by these exhaustive questions by a phenomenal moderator tonight, please reach out to me. And most importantly, thank you for your consideration. And I hope to earn your vote in a few weeks and build upon Sacramento. Because we do have a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. But I always bring my little water bottle to remind myself that we have a lot of greatness in the city of Sacramento. A lot of nonprofits, community groups, and others that care about Sacramento. So we need to focus on our issues, but also build